All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to our 8:30 a.m. Media Q&A, a new understanding of South American settlement. Our speaker today is Marco Pfeiffer from the University of California, Berkeley. And we've passed out a press release and sent one out this morning that corresponds to this research. And Marco is going to give a short presentation and then we'll open it up for questions.
I'm glad the governor decided to speak at 8:30, so you can be here, guys. Today I'm going to share with you about the recent findings of wetlands and lakes during the late Pleistocene and early Holocene in the Atacama Desert in northern Chile, just in the time when the first humans were reaching South America. And briefly tell you why these findings change our deep-rooted idea of the Atacama Desert being a barrier for human migration. When the Spanish conquerors confronted the desert during their first expeditions, they were decimated by the harshness of the desert. And since then, the central valley of the Atacama Desert, which lies between the coastal range and the Andes, has been seen as a place unable to support human populations. So, of course, archaeologists never looked for human settlements in the hyper-arid core of the Atacama Desert. That is starting to change, and part of the story is what I'm going to tell you today. And actually, this story, to be fair, started in the early 2000s when researchers found evidence of a wet period in the Altiplano region that happened between 17 and 9,000 years ago. And they estimated that the average rainfall for the Altiplano during that period was about 6 times what it is nowadays. But at the same time, accumulating geological evidence tell us that the hyper-arid core, which is this part, has been as dry as it is today, at least for 2.5 million years ago. So, of course, the idea of the Atacama Desert being a place unable to support inhabitants still stay in place. But if you can see here in these blue lines represent drainage systems that connect the lowlands of the Atacama with the Altiplano region. And actually, in 2007, a group of researchers published in PNAS that these drainage systems were activated exactly during that wet period in the Altiplano region. And following that evidence, a group of archaeologists in 2013 published an extraordinary finding, which was a human settlement of 13,000 years old in the hyper-arid core of the Atacama Desert. And what is extraordinary about this finding is that if you see the landscape today, is a plantless, barren landscape. So the only way that this site could have happened is because there was a stream nearby that can supply water to this human settlement. And this is the first time an early human settlement, so we're talking about 13,000 years ago, was found inside the hyper-arid core. So what inspired our research was precisely what those drainage systems, or what those drainage activation might have impacted the full watershed. And precisely we were looking for the lower basins, the lower enclosing basins, in which many of these streams terminate. And the evidence was telling us that something happened down there, so water must have been accumulating. And then we went for the evidence. And what we found actually was evidence for wetlands and lakes in nowadays hyper-arid core of the Atacama during the late Pleistocene, early Holocene, and that the lowlands that today correspond to that are covered by a thick salt crust kept underneath a precious record of a period when these flatlands hosted lakes and wetlands. So we found many of evidence like gastropods, plant remains, diatomea, phytoliths, calcium carbonate layers that tell us that fresh water was happening here during that wet period. So we compare our evidence with a few wet analogs that exist in the area. And what we estimated is that during that time period, the lowlands were covered by marshlands like this one, full of grasses, sedges that can support animals like camelids and other extinct mammals, and that instead of humans were able to inhabit and settle down in these places, instead of rapidly moving through the few wet streams or perennial streams that exist nowadays. And what this research changes, that the idea of the Atacama Desert, although it is a barrier nowadays, not with our technology, but for early human settlers, for hunter-gatherers, it wasn't at the time they were reaching southern South America, because the Atacama Desert was full of these wetlands and plains that were able to support human settlements. And I'm open for questions.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any questions from reporters in the room? Please state your name and affiliation.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Morrell from BBC News. Do you have any idea how big the lakes and wetlands
Yeah,
were?
well, so here, this is a zoom of the area where we found the lakes and wetlands. The green correspond to the wetlands and the blue correspond to the lakes. And all combined were about 600 square kilometers, if you combine all of them. So what we imagine is like we found evidence for a continuous carpet of marshland on the lowlands of the desert.
And sorry, one more follow-up. Human migration. Where were people coming from and going to at that period? Just a quick revision session.
Yeah, well, that's. I'm not an archaeologist, a specialist, but of course interested in the topic, and that's an open question. Although the most supported theory is that they were coming through the coast. But the problem is that the coast at that time was 100 meters below nowadays. So there are very few sites for that period. And actually, I show you the sites. These are the few sites that we have for the coast, and actually we have more sites. There are more sites for early human settlers for the Altiplano region. But people think that they were coming from the coast. Oh, from Bering, yeah, like the Northern America, South America migration is the.
Okay, so what is the actual evidence you're using in this? I mean, what is the evidence for wetlands? And I guess the other question I had is sort of where is Monteverde located on that map? Relative to what we're looking at here.
Okay. So the evidence that we find, for instance, here is a profile. We don't see nothing here, but we analyzed this profile, for instance, and looked for small phytoliths and diatomea, and what you find diatomea here, and instantly you know that there was water there. And the species we found were from brackish to freshwater, so that there was a changing, continuous changing of conditions, locally. The date range is 17 to 9,000 years ago. There are also plant remains, like below the salt crust, there are this black organic matter, which tell us that there was like peat bogs happening there. You asked about Monteverde. So, no, Monteverde will be in this, about here. Over there is Monteverde, yeah. Further south.
Two short questions. Harvey Leifert, freelance. First, what is the altitude of the area you're talking about? And secondly, I'm inferring that you have not actually found any trace of human settlement, only evidence that it could have been there because of the conditions that existed. Is that correct?
So, part yes and part no. So first, I'm gonna answer your first question. So, the altitude of this area of the Central Valley in the Atacama is above 1,000 meters above sea level. It's a heavily tectonic active area, so it's uplifted. And regarding the archaeological evidence, yeah, we found some archaeological sites surrounding the flatlands, those salt lakes. But we're not publishing that information because we need to conduct archaeological excavations to really have a context of what happened. But the evidence is suggesting that there was human settlements, and the dates are pretty old too. And the site that I show you, which is this one, is the Mani site, is pretty close to the, although it's related to a perennial stream, it's really close to the lowlands. So we think 3 years ago when they found this, they thought, well, they were living because of the streams, but now we think, well, more people might have living, even more people down there because it was even a broader area, and the lowlands can like a bigger area able to sustain more population.
Are there any other questions from reporters in the room? Are there any questions on the chat? No, great. This concludes our media availability. Thank you very much. Next up at 9 a.m., new research on the ionosphere, our interference to space. Thank you.